From the twisted realm of science and the darkest pits of reason comes chilling tales of godlessness. Bear witness to the unfathomable terror that is the Good Atheist.
I want to just say this. If for anybody who listens to the bonus podcast, I was re-listening to it the other day, and I sounded pretty stuffed up. I didn't even realize it at the time. I have been sick. You ever been sick and not know that you were sick and just suddenly feeling, why am I so run down? I feel run down. Well, it turns out that I'm as sick as a dog, so I am literally stuffed myself with orange juice until I'm about to burst. Like, that's the typical remedy, right? Orange juice?
Yeah, there's something going on with this house, man. We've been sick for a couple of weeks. It wouldn't surprise me if it turned out there's some kind of radioactive isotope in the garage that is just poisoning us.
Well, you've heard of radon, right?
I've heard of it. I remember seeing commercials in the 80s about it, like, those lame, like, it shows like a kid's face and like these blue lights, and it's like radon, the silent killer.
I know, and you know how many people die every year from like radon poisoning? It's something insane, like 14,000 or something crazy. It's just really high.
Didn't Weird Al Yankovic's parents die from that, or was that carbon monoxide?
Ooh, you're asking me weird questions. I really don't visit Weird Al's wiki page all that much. I mean, I used to be into Weird Al when I was 12.
Yeah, all I'm saying is that there's a lot of invisible gases and rays and things that kill people, and I think that we are slowly being poisoned to death.
But the thing is, the garage is not actually underground, so because that's typically in basements is where you find it. And we've been spending a lot less time in the basement because of the whole garage thing. So I don't know what it is. I just think it's sometimes you have one of those cold, and we just keep passing it on from like person to person. It keeps on mutating. It goes from me mutates, it goes to you mutates. I just think we no longer have that whole group herd immunity. You ever heard of that theory? Group herd immunity?
Tell me about it.
Well, it's
lay it on me.
Well, group herd immunity is just basically that if you have a large enough group of people and they're in tight enough corners, sometimes they may share sort of antibodies with one another, through all kinds of ways, sometimes just sharing foods and that kind of stuff. So
mothers pass on certain immunities to children as well.
Exactly. I mean, so maybe the problem is that we're just so isolated, just you and me, that we have no more herd defense for immunization.
I think it probably has more to do with the fact that the kitchen is a bomb. And I just wanted to mention that people are lucky that there was actually a radio show today, because was it yesterday that we almost died from eating mystery hot dogs from like months ago?
Oh, yeah. Get this, guys. All right, here's the story. Basically, I had put 2 hot dogs in an IGA bag. I normally don't do this, but I was
just like a plastic
I was
grocery
at
bag.
my girlfriend's. You need to shut up and let me finish. I put it in a grocery bag just because it was at the girlfriend's and I just didn't have anything else to put in. This is not something I do normally. I never do this, but I just did it once. And I put it in the fridge, but unfortunately our other roommate constantly does it with his food, and he leaves for weeks on end. So when I mentioned which one was our hot dogs, I'm like, it's the one in the grocery bag where there's 2 wieners. Well, guess what? It turns out that he had exactly 2 wieners in a grocery bag that who knows how long it had been there.
It was long enough that there was this weird neon pink sludge kind of on the bottom. I was looking at it, I was like, is this supposed to be
Pink?
there?
Is this supposed to be pink?
Yeah.
And when I looked at it, here was the funny thing, because there were actually 2 different types of wieners. His was all beef, and mine was, I guess, the original.
Yeah, but it's the same fucking brand and everything.
It's the same brand. It was just, I'm looking at it, and my first instinct is to say, in 24 hours, what happened to this hot dog? I was like, oh my, that was my first reaction. I was like, oh my God, what is going on in our fridge? But that was avoiding disaster. Good thing you went over and you asked me.
Yeah, but I just tell there's probably a whole bunch of stuff like that all in our kitchen that is killing us. So I just wanted, if people will find out that 2 atheist guys are found in a house weeks later by roommate who inadvertently killed them, that's us.
Do you remember that guy, that video of that dude who ate that pickle? You remember that? It was pretty widespread. It was like this one guy, he sees this pickle that's been on his computer monitor for like 3 days, and his buddies, pay him $10 to eat it, and he fucking died. I'm like, you know what? Don't mess around with that shit. If you see something if you leave mayonnaise out accidentally, throw it out, okay? Don't fuck around with really, really dangerous food, and otherwise you may end up dead. Okay, with that, let's move on to now. Everyone's going to probably think that today is Bash the Catholics Day, because honestly, we're going to be talking extensively about it because they were just making the news, and it's not for good reason. It is just for absolutely devastatingly horrible and annoying reasons as well. But there's a lot of stuff to be said about it. Let's start off first with now we talked about before, and I don't want to talk about it too much. In Ireland, we had mentioned before on some of the other shows, there was the Ryan report, a 2,900-page report of abuse, physical, mental, sexual abuse that was going on for 30 or 40 years, something insane over in Ireland, and no one's doing anything. The police, politicians, that kind of stuff, they're all fucking controlled by the church, so no one is seeking anything. The only thing they've done, essentially at this point now, is the government has said, well, to the church, you're going to be paying a little bit more than what you normally would be paying to victims. So, that's the pressure they've put on so far.
Let me understand exactly what's going on here. Is it a case where basically the government has said, we've taken a look at all of the horrible things that have happened, and you're just going to be paying like a big fine to make up for it? Is that kind of the arrangement between the Irish church and?
I don't know if there's a sort of like how. If that's the only thing that they're doing, but let me tell you that that's the only thing they've done so far.
And as far as we know, no priests have been arrested.
Well, no one's been named, buddy. Not one person is yet named, dead or alive. Like, no one has been named in that. And this is exactly also, which leads me to what's going on in Bridgeport. Now, you may remember Bridgeport. It has the distinction of being one of the worst cities.
Bridgeport, Ireland?
Connecticut. Bridgeport, Connecticut.
Oh.
It's like at Hartford and Bridgeport are like the drug capitals of of America, practically.
And not the fun ones either.
No, it's more like it's because it's the drug hub, between the East and West. It's kind of like right smack dab in that middle, so all the shit goes through Bridgeport. It's like, if you come from Bridgeport, man, I feel sorry for you. Seriously, get out of there. It's a fucking dump. I've been there. I've been to the ghetto in Bridgeport accidentally. You and I, we went to that ghetto.
Oh,
that was in fucking Bridgeport, buddy.
Was Bridgeport.
Yeah,
wow.
We went to go see a hockey game shortly after 9/11. I don't even know why we did this. I crossed the border with an expired Medicare card. Do you remember that shit?
Yeah.
That was just stupid.
Back in the day when the borders weren't, when people were free.
Yeah, well, we were free to go about and visit our neighbors. So we show up at Bridgeport, and we watch an OHL game, and we didn't stand up for it. It wasn't even the national anthem, if I recall. I remember they were playing
America,
God Bless America.
Yeah, no, America the Beautiful. Which personally I hate. Like, as a song, it's just annoying.
It is really rather annoying. And then everyone was like, stand the fuck up for it. It's like, for America. And we were just like, we're Canadians, dude. We'll stand up for a national anthem. It was like, we're going to fucking shoot you in the back of the head. So we stood up. Let me tell you that. We stood up and we just put our hands to our chest, shaking.
We pretended to be Americans because it was the only way to be safe.
So on our way out, we have a dumb friend who basically is a doofus. So he's just decided, I don't know, maybe he's going to take a shortcut or something like that. And all of a sudden, boom, we are in the ghetto, like accidentally in the ghetto of Bridgeport. And I was scared to fucking death because I've seen some ghettos. I mean, I've been to Detroit and I know what fucked up, ratty ass cities look like, and Bridgeport looked like the ghetto of ghetto Detroit.
Well, here's the thing. We were driving, we turned into Bridgeport by accident, and we immediately knew it was a mistake and tried to get out. In the 30 seconds it took us to escape Bridgeport, somebody threw a rock at the back of the car.
Yeah. Oh, but the scariest thing, the fucking best thing about that ride was that when we drove by, there was an Aston Martin parked in the middle of the ghetto. And we were like, get the fuck out of here, because if a $500,000 car is in one of the worst neighborhoods in the world, you don't even want to know what the fuck is going on there because, wow, no one's touching that car. There's a reason, man. There is a reason. But anyways, there's the church or the diocese in Bridgeport is also attempting to quash the and keep the name secret of their own few thousand-page report about lawsuits and dating back all the way to 2001 from some of their from some of the clergy, and they don't want those names to be released. They cite instead saying like, well, we've done a lot to educate the community about the dangers of pedophilia and the priesthood and blah blah blah. And I'm like, what? I want to understand how these guys think that they can just really get away with that. And I hate to admit it, but they are getting away with it. No one is doing anything about this. Well, it fucking makes me sick.
It just blows me away, and I talk about this every single time we bring this subject up, but just how widespread this seems and how few people are going to jail over it. I mean, when you think about the things that you can end up in jail for, at this point there's so many laws that, you get a bit crazy and a bit rowdy, you'll end up in jail. But apparently, molesting kids, like molesting a lot of kids, being moved around because you molest kids, apparently you don't go to jail for that.
I can be arrested for screaming at someone really, really loudly and violently, like not even laying a hand on them. But, we have assault laws in Canada that if you are verbally assaulting someone and it just goes too far, you can go to jail. I mean, it won't be for a long time, but at least you will get punished. But apparently molesting kids is like, nah, it's all good. It is a fly, man. You can pass go and you can collect your $200.
You'll at least, get a trial and everything like that when you yell at somebody. But this doesn't even go to trial. This does not even go to trial. No one is being tried. Well, there's a couple of guys, but geez, look at
they're lawsuits. They're civil lawsuits that basically the court says, well, you need to make these public now because this information needs to be known. And they're like, well, I don't really think that's necessary. We're dealing with it. I mean, they always take the same stance. We're like, well, these priests, we know about them and they are in therapy. The fuck, they're in therapy. They're just going around to different parishes molesting the fuck out of your kids. That's what they're doing. And what was it that Alfred Hitchcock had a famous story where he was driving by and he saw a kid talking to a priest and he yelled at the kid to run, to get the hell out of here, to get away from that guy. And that was before like really all that news came out, because Alfred Hitchcock's been dead for a while. I don't know if I don't know if I'm breaking this news out here. Hitchcock is dead.
Nah, he didn't look too good back in the 60s, so
he was a big fat guy in the 60s.
Not the kind of guy who makes it to 100 by any means.
No, he doesn't make it to 100. But anyways, that was back then. Even Alfred Hitchcock knew that there was some fishy shit going on, but I mean, I've always contended they have known the Catholic Church. If you watch the documentary "Deliver Us from Evil," which I highly recommend, it's the story of a pedophile living in, I believe it's California, who basically just, I think, molested over 200 kids, and he's free. He's not in jail. I think he's living in Britain or something like that. And most of the people most of his neighbors don't even know that he's a molester. It's scary, but at the same time, like, he admits, because this is almost an attempt, I guess, for him for absolution. But he admits that the Catholic Church knows that a significant portion of their members are molesters, and it just seems to happen quite naturally, and there's nothing they can do about it. And think about if they know that now, how long have they known that? They must have known this shit for hundreds of years, for a really long time. All right, these kinds of improprieties. This ain't new. This is not new. It's just that. Only recently have people had the guts to be able to say anything. I mean, I can't even imagine how hard it must have been 300 years ago to admit that your priest molested you.
Well, it's always that funny thing that people seem to think about today is that, oh, it's so much worse today. Look at all the horrible things that are happening. And I always try and tell them they were happening before. Worse things were happening before. It just wasn't being reported.
Yeah, you ever watch The Boys of St. Vincent? Okay, that's some pretty fucked up shit. Like even that's pretty much the equivalent of what was happening in Ireland. And the only reason that kind of crazy stuff was allowed to even happen there is just because they give the church, like free reign. It's like, you can do whatever you want. And then all of a sudden later they find out, oh my God, what have you done? Well, you can't give carte blanche to these kinds of institutions, especially not the ones that think that they are, they're beyond the laws of man, that they only obey the laws of God. And who knows what kind of crazy justification they have in their own mind for even molestation. Well, they must have literature inside that says, well, it's not so bad. Because, I mean, come on. It's pretty fucked up. How could you even... if you had, like, say you're not a molester yourself, you're a Catholic priest, and you take it fairly seriously, and you believe in God, and you believe in goodness, but you know that there's a certain percentage of your fellow members that are fucking molesting kids. How are you going to feel about that?
Yeah, I have no idea how that whole situation works, and how basically this hasn't already torn the cat. Like, get rid of just the idea of talking about the Catholic Church falling apart or disintegrating or anything like that, but just or being forced to break apart because of the insane amount of child molestation that has happened. But take a look at inside. How have there not been a whole bunch of priests who have just said, I can no longer associate myself with this organization, an organization that is covering up child molestation?
Well, I have to admit, there's probably quite a few people, even priests themselves, that just don't believe it all, but that they don't even come forward, because what else are they going to do? Imagine you spent 30 years of your life, in the clergy. Well, what the hell are you going to do when you step out of that? Your job was to just preach to people, and now you're going to stop and do what? Work at Walmart?
You know what? If you're not going to be a cocksucking motherfucker who basically stands by silently while kids are getting molested, sure, or do something. You don't have to go to Walmart, but don't stick around and silently basically allow this kind of stuff to happen.
Yeah, well, here's something that even makes it all the more annoying. Let's take the response from the Vatican when it comes, in terms of the stuff that happened in Ireland, or the Ryan Report, as it's called. It's got your name on it, Betty.
Oh, yay!
The Ryan Report.
Yay!
Anyways, there's a cardinal by the name of Antonio Canizares who basically came out like he's the one that made the closest thing you could have to an official response when it comes to.
Is this guy like the press release type guy?
Let's just say that he's a major figure. When you're a cardinal, there are very few cardinals. So when you're a cardinal, you're like the man. Mm-hmm. All right. You when you say something, people listen.
And when they say something, it's basically kind of taken as this is coming from the Vatican, and not just he's just a crazy cardinal that happens to be at the Vatican at the time or something. Yeah,
you can bet that when a cardinal member says something to the press, it's just because he represents the majority of interest of the church itself. There may be dissenting voices like in any institution, but for the most part, people are talking together and saying, what's going to be a response, and one guy comes forward and says, I think that we should say this, and then that's what they go over and say. So he has come out, they've decided that their whole angle is going to be how do we downplay this whole molestation thing? So they're in their wisdom, their infinite wisdom, the response has been to say, well, you know what, abortion is worse than child raping or child molestation, because they're there are 40 million abortions that happen all the time. Those are all baby killers. But that's far worse. So these are the kinds of things that we should be focusing on, and forget about all this molestation.
This seems like a pretty big departure from when the Vatican basically called that gigantic summit to deal with everything that didn't resolve anything at all.
Well, it's funny because the whole summit, when the Pope Benedict tried to convene a summit on it, he even said himself that churches should come out and be open and blah blah blah. Which is a load of bullshit, because if you know who Ratzinger is, he's the same man that as a cardinal wrote a report specifically saying that when it comes to the charges of molestation and stuff like that, the church's official policy should be to bury any evidence about it and to pay off the families. This is the same fucking man who now comes out and says, oh, well, you should cooperate. Obviously, those memos with his name on it exist. They obviously show that he was his opinion is no, we really shouldn't be telling everybody. And, to some degree, I can understand, because if really all of those reports were brought out, if all of those names, let me tell you, if the Ryan Report names came out, people would probably be shocked by how many people are named. I would be surprised if people aren't named. There's a long history of people in the Catholic Church of behaving like monsters. Okay, it's just, it is crazy. I mean, this is the same institution that believes that suffering is good, that all human beings are inherently sinful. If you think that every human being is sinful, how do you look at them? I think you probably have a really misogynistic, cruel view of humanity, don't you think? You would view human beings as incomplete, corrupt souls that need to get beaten into saintliness. It's just, I find in general, not just certain branches of Christianity may be a little bit, milder than that, but Catholicism is fucking depressingly cruel, and it just makes you feel bad.
It's funny because compared to all of the rest of the religions, you're always hearing about the Catholics and how Catholic nuns would beat on kids, and how Catholic priests would beat off on kids, and how all these
just a fun group.
I'm a Protestant, or I was a Protestant. I still associate myself as far as what was your religion before you basically decided what your religion was going to be? Well, it was I was brought up a Protestant. So and for us, it was we didn't have any all of that kind of garbage. It's Protestants are bad at being religious, basically. So
well, the Protestants are kind of their whole thing became an obsession with working hard. It basically became that. The Quakers and those kinds of things, like the Shakers, their idea of saintliness was in putting yourself in your work 100%. So that's kind of, you can see actually in America the modernist movement or the industrial movement as having a strong precedence in Protestantism. I mean, it's just go out and work. Like, you will achieve saintliness through hard work.
Yeah, I'm down with that.
I mean, I can understand that it's probably a lot more useful than feeling guilty, because feeling guilty and assuming that all human beings are sinful is just an awful philosophy.
It's just an awful way to live.
It really is. It is not life affirming at all. It just says everybody is a piece of crap. Okay, talking about not life affirming, I want to mention this really quickly. I want to touch on what's going on in Afghanistan. I wrote an article the other day about the province of Kunduz. That's in northern part of Afghanistan. It's roughly the size of Massachusetts. So it's fairly large. It's
I don't even know how big
square kilometers.
I don't even know how big Massachusetts is.
It's about
give me a province. Give me a province.
New Brunswick, maybe.
Okay,
maybe
it's
a bit
pretty
smaller
small.
than that.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, but I mean, it's a province inside Afghanistan. Now, this province is currently being patrolled and defended by about 600 German soldiers. So if you can imagine 600 people trying to protect
an entire
province, you'd probably be like, that's ridiculous. So obviously there are lots of Taliban all over the place, and what they've done in this province is they've effectively shut down the education of women. They go around to towns putting up signs saying that if you send your daughters to school, we will kill them. And everybody's scared to shit. There's only a few guys that have there's only one school actually that hasn't submitted to it, and it just happens to be because the principal was part of the Mujahideen, and his response to the Taliban was like, I have done crazier shit than you have. If you get anywhere near me and my students, I'm going to go apeshit on you. So I kind of have some respect for his really hardcore stance, but at the same time I can understand why the administrators of the other schools are deadly afraid, because these are not the kinds of guys that fuck around.
Didn't they do a whole election in Afghanistan and everything like that with the pink fingers, and everybody's so proud that democracy has come here? My whole opinion on bringing democracy to countries like this is it's useless, because so long as you have minorities like that are willing to come out of the woodwork and go against the democratic will by using violence, then that's no democracy at all.
Yeah, it's true. And one of the big problems, too, is that they tried to send some police officers over to the province to try to take care of the situation, because obviously the German army is overwhelmed. But even just traveling to the province, 2 of the police officers got killed. So they just turned back. There's a large degree of lawlessness over there, and it's just because Afghanistan is mostly a very disparate country. Not since the 11th century have they had more than 60 years of coherent rule. It's not even a country by any measure. I mean, it's just Iraq is more of a country than Afghanistan, just to give you an idea, and Iraq's barely a country itself. And that's one of the things we don't understand. We have this very a person identifies with their country, and that's it. But people in Afghanistan, they think of themselves more in a very tribalistic kind of way. It's just, you're not going to be able to go over there and say, okay, you're an Afghan, now you must fight for other Afghans as well. They're like, there are other issues here. We're not friends with everybody in this country. There are serious divisions that have not been mended. And to think that we can just walk over there to say, we're going to bring a democracy and everyone's going to get along. No, actually, it's going to be worse. You're going to come and bring democracy, and then all of a sudden you're still going to have the same problems, except for now you have a crazy contingent of the society that feels galvanized because they feel as though they're being marginalized, and they have guns. So what do marginalized individuals with guns do? Oh yeah, and they also happen to be religious extremists. Hello? It's like, what a powder keg situation. I can't even imagine worse of a situation. What are you supposed to do? What can you do? You would have to murder every fucking extremist over there, and even that wouldn't be enough. They probably have sons somewhere.
I've racked my brain over it, and there's just I don't know. It's just, you gotta wait for people to figure their own shit out. You gotta help them figure it out, but it's hard to say, because to say we shouldn't get involved, but at the same time, if there was no one there, it would be even worse. There'd be genocides going on, and what are you supposed to do? I don't even want to. I can't suggest. If we had the answer off of this podcast, then we deserve a Nobel Peace Prize.
If we have any answers, we should probably become part of some think tank, and people can rack our brains for all the solutions to the country. I do generally think that it would be a terrible idea to cut and run, obviously, from that.
Oh, you're gonna use that expression?
No, well, okay, not that expression, but I do think that there is a certain amount of peacekeeping that's going to be needed in that place for quite some time, because it's the majority of individuals living in Afghanistan, I believe, are happier and better when the Taliban's not in power, and for the most part, the Taliban is the only group that really is organized enough to really try to make any claim to that country, because otherwise, I don't think anybody really cares or has enough of an identity about being an Afghan.
Well, it's always,
that they're really going to galvanize themselves.
We've always talked about, say, Africa and the Middle East being poorly served by their leaders, and mainly it's because either the good leaders get murdered, or the rest of the people who would be good leaders say, there's no way I want to become leader, and therefore get murdered.
I do not want to be murdered. And you know what? I cannot blame them. Being murdered is not fun. I would not want to be murdered. Murder is bad. Okay, the last subject that I wanted to talk about, it not too much in depth, but I think this is kind of amusing, is the fact that Wikipedia has banned any members of the Church of Scientology from making any changes to Wikipedia whatsoever. Have you've heard about this?
I heard about this via tweeting. I'm getting big on Twitter. I'm starting to feel like it's something nifty, some kind of interesting communication schism. And that was one of the first real bits of news that I picked up off of it, and I was like, that is awesome.
It is pretty awesome. I actually read about the article. It's funny, actually. One of the things that fascinated me most was how the process was occurring, because that's kind of something that I scrutinize a lot, because people who accuse Wikipedia of basically I don't want to say censorship, but maybe or that Wikipedia has too much bias or control, that kind of stuff in terms of content. But there is a unique problem that there's obviously going to always be people who abuse of that system. So you naturally have to design
safeguards,
and that's got to be a tough thing, because the more safeguards you put in, the less open it is for other people. So it can only have a certain degree of openness. It just turns out that if you give the reins to people, if in the case of Scientology they have a financial motive for changing information about them, from removing any controversy on them, of course they're going. You cannot allow these people to have any amount of input on their own wikis. Like, why are you editing these wikis? You have absolutely no right. But
well, I mean, apparently what the problem is, and first off, as far as Wikipedia goes, you're never supposed to do. Basically, the general agreement is, when you sign up or when you edit anything, the general agreement that you're agreeing to is that you have nothing to do yourself personally with the, no stake in the page that you're changing. And of course, throughout the years, a whole bunch of politicians and news organizations and a whole bunch of people have gotten into trouble because obviously that rule gets broken all the time, but it usually only gets broken in that way that, the interesting Coca-Cola wiki page will get replaced by this company Borg wiki page that's just boring as all
just
shit.
Whitewash.
And it's just garbage, and it's just, propaganda. But Scientology took it even further, because what they would do is they would constantly remove properly sourced information from their wiki pages. So they weren't just basically corporatizing their wiki page.
No,
they were systematically deleting information that everybody in, say, the discussion page had agreed on, and that had followed to a T all of the requirements for Wikipedia. So basically, they were cheating.
Oh yeah, I mean, if you don't think that the Church of Scientology operates like a business when it comes to monitoring information for itself on the web, I mean, you are a fool. I mean, here's an organization that makes an insane amount of money, and they have people in their employ constantly trying to essentially erase the facts of their religion.
Don't even break it down to say people. I mean, name me a big company that doesn't have like a PR department and a marketing department. Now, I guarantee you that Scientology has departments full of people whose job it is to monitor and manipulate the kind of information that goes on about their organization.
I wonder what it would be to meet those people. Imagine you're on like a blind date, and the chick's like, "Oh, I'm a PR person for Scientology." How would that be like?
These people are such high-level thetans that they don't involve themselves with non-Scientologists. I guarantee it.
I'm just saying, just sort of like as a general thing. Like,
oh, like it's like a funny, wacky joke, like hanging out with high-top
let's just say,
thetans?
actually, you're on a date, and the chick seems absolutely normal, and all of a sudden, boom, she just says she's a Scientologist. Like, what would be your reaction?
I don't know. It's like
I've never actually. I'll be honest with you. I don't think I've actually ever met a Scientologist for real. I never had a conversation with a Scientologist. I've always dreamed of having a conversation.
I've had conversations with low level, like, I'm getting into Scientology and Scientology is neat people. I've never had a conversation with like a high level, or not even high level, but like a mid level, like actually giving a shit about going up the ladder and this and that. Anybody that's being weaved that close in,
or even just met somebody who does any auditing. You probably never met an auditor.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, we've talked about it before. We've been tempted to go in and check out the auditing process, but I'm not going to risk it.
No,
and it's not because I'm afraid of having my ideas challenged. It's because these people brainwash.
It's not even just brainwash; they collect information about you. So you walk in, and they will ask information about you, note everything down, and research the fuck out of you. And they'll do that, and they are relentless. I mean, they keep notes on everybody. Whenever you do the whole e-meter test, I mean, people think that it's all about this to test whether or not you're lying or telling the truth. Really what it is to just gather information that can be used against you, honestly. So if they have a whole bunch of information saying, oh, yeah, you killed a hooker in 1995, well, you better do what we tell you then, huh? Yeah, I guess you will. Bitch. And there must be a lot of these, a lot of the high-profile members probably have some pretty fucking deep secrets, dark secrets.
Well, the truth of the matter is everybody has secrets.
Everybody has at least one fucked up secret that if it came out, it would ruin you. Ruin you!
All of our secrets are easily available via the web radio show, so there's very little that they can hold against us.
Yeah, well, they can hold it against us, but so can many thousands of other people. So, joke's on you, Scientology.